Okay, so
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Alexis Zizipoy. I'm part of FIP ECPG Early Career Group. And on behalf of the International Pharmaceutical Federation Early Career Pharmacy Group, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this interview series. You have had such an inspiring journey from in the world of pharmacy, from your leadership role at Pharmaceutical Society of Australia to now working in education, training, and now in the pharmaceutical industry. Your contributions, especially during COVID, has made a real difference in advancing pharmacy-led services and expanding access to care. So today we are going to be exploring your experiences, your perspective on universal health coverage, and the lessons young early career pharmacists like me can take from your story. So we are so glad to have you today. So please, can you kindly introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alexis. Pleasure to talk to the FIP ECP group. So my name's Simone Diamandis. I'm a pharmacist based in Australia, and I've had a career in various pharmacy roles, as you outlined before. My journey with pharmacy probably started when I was quite young. At the age of 14, I got a part-time job as a pharmacy assistant in a community pharmacy. And it wasn't until I started working in that community pharmacy that it wasn't until I started working there that I decided that pharmacy was definitely the job for me. So I really loved the community service that the pharmacists provided in that pharmacy. It wasn't just about medication supply, it was about reviewing people's medicines, helping them, with common minor ailments. And there were a number of services, even all that time ago, that pharmacy was offering. And that really inspired me to want to help patients and help the community. And I always had an interest in medicines. Um, so from there, I did a science degree first. I wasn't smart enough to do pharmacy to start with, but I had the passion. And then I completed a pharmacy degree. And after that, the main roles that I've had are working in community pharmacy, predominantly. I've worked in academia, as you've outlined, in education and training for both undergrad and postgraduate pharmacy-related programs. And I've also worked for professional bodies such as the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia, where I led their education and training across Australia, and also worked at a state-based level, looking at the advocacy and policies at state level. In Australia, we have a federated system, and so I was one of the state managers where during COVID, that was one of the periods where we saw a lot of policy changes, and I was really proud to be a part of driving those policy changes. At the state level, which also had national impacts. And also during my career, as you mentioned, I've worked in the pharmaceutical industry in various roles, and I know that will be more of the discussion and focus today. So, over probably the last 20 years, I've worked in and out of the pharmaceutical industry. Uh, Starting in an education and training role, and then moving into a marketing role, and currently more of a pharmacy channel role within the industry. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that, but I've had a really broad career, and really excited to be talking to ECPs about how they can also get involved in these different sectors of pharmacy.
Thank you so much. Okay, so in your current role right now, what would you say that you find most rewarding? And how has this shaped the way you see healthcare more broadly?
Yeah, look, my current role, because we're healthcare professionals ourselves, I feel that I can really contribute to the pharmaceutical industry around what is the things, firstly, that pharmacists can do to ensure that medicines are used safely and effectively? What are the things that we can do to also facilitate prevention of certain diseases? Sometimes it's a matter of, yes, educating healthcare professionals, but also providing them with the tools and resources that they need to really identify patients or treat patients according to the recommended guidelines for various conditions. So what really drives me is the fact that, we have such a broad base of pharmacists within the pharmaceutical industry. You can work in drug development, you can work in medical affairs, you can work in training, marketing, pharmacovigilance, drug safety. All of that is really, really important in terms of ensuring that patients receive the best healthcare that they can. Um, and when they are being treated, that they're the right patient on the right medicine at the right time. So I think what really makes me happy about working in the pharmaceutical industry is that we're all working towards that common goal of really trying to improve patient outcomes. And without the pharmaceutical industry, without innovations in drug development and drug discovery, then we're not maximising those outcomes for patients. If you look at the developments over years around cancer treatments and chronic disease treatments, and the difference that can make not only to a person's condition, but their multiple comorbidities, I think that, as a pharmacist, I'm very proud to contribute towards that working within the industry.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. So from your perspective, what role can the pharmaceutical industry play in advancing public-private partnerships to support the universal health coverage?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'll start off by saying that the health system's made up of a number of different stakeholders. So we've got patients, we've got doctors, pharmacists, there's hospitals, there's diagnostic providers, there's payers, could be insurers, policymakers, and many, many more people. And I think what sets the pharmaceutical industry apart is that we've got that broad visibility across the entire ecosystem. So, as I mentioned, we're involved in clinical research, early detection and diagnosis, referral pathways, treatments, medicines access, health technology assessments, and funding, and so on. So this really gives a unique helicopter view of the system, and it allows us to identify gaps and systemic barriers that others often working in silos might not see. But visibility in itself is not enough. In solving these challenges, we really need collaboration. And I think that's where the partnerships between industry and public-private sectors are really, really important, because we've got to create, cost-effective solutions. And so I know what we try to do is really co-create these solutions in partnership so that there's wins for government, industry, but most importantly, that the wins are there for the patients, because that's why we get up every day. Um, I mean, as a pharmacist, that's why I get up every day. So, and some examples of that might be, there are, for example, foundations that different pharmaceutical companies might have that, support. Providing medicines to underprivileged areas and access to those medicines, or patient assistance programs. So I think the partnerships are important if we're going to create that universal kind of health coverage, the access. Every patient deserves the right to being able to access health and treatments and not at a high cost. It should
Yeah.
be equitable for everyone.
Okay, so you talked about foundation. So building on that, is there other practical ways that you think that the healthcare industry can come together with the pharmaceutical industry to achieve the main goal, which is making drugs affordable and accessible? So are there other
Yeah,
practical ways that you think?
Yeah. I think, look, as I mentioned before, that definitely, partnering with pharmacists on education and training. The industry will partner with specialists and doctors and allied healthcare professionals and pharmacists to ensure that they have that knowledge of not just the new treatments, but the disease states, best practice, guidelines. I think working with healthcare providers to identify what are some of the challenges with different patients and different health conditions. What are their challenges as well? Because we often try to be everything to everyone, and we know that that's not realistic. So I think these are some of the ways. And I think also working with policymakers and government is important because that's where sometimes the regulations can really limit access to healthcare and access to treatment. So it will vary in different countries, but I see those as some of the key activities that the pharmaceutical industry can be involved in.
Okay, so like how you have so much experience. So what challenges do you think that still hold back pharmacists from taking on bigger roles in global health systems? Like challenges you
Yeah.
must have experienced or others have experienced or things you think.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. So I've talked about some of those. Well, I'll start with the first one, which I think is regulatory constraints.
Yeah,
So, there's a lot of healthcare systems globally that restrict pharmacists to just traditional dispensing roles. And some of them really lag behind broadening that or recognizing the scope of practice that a pharmacist has. So I think if we can remove that barrier, we're not then going to limit what a pharmacist can do and where they can do it and when they can do it and who they can do that for. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is there's a lack of integration of pharmacists. Firstly, in primary healthcare, but also working with other healthcare providers. So we've got to get that integration piece right, because if we sit outside of that in a silo, then we're not making the meaningful contribution that we could be making to patient outcomes. Um, Technology has often been a bit of a barrier as well. So if we lack the technology to communicate to other healthcare professionals, or if we lack the technology to access patient data, then we've only got a small part of the picture. And so that's going to limit what we're able to do. I've also spoken a little bit about education and training.
yeah,
If pharmacists aren't provided with the right education and training for these expanding roles, then it will restrict our ability to do them. A, our ability to do them, the uptake of those services being delivered, and B, our ability to do them well and impactfully. So that's also important. And then I think I'll probably just mention two more. Um,
okay,
one is policy and funding limitations. So it's great for pharmacists to contribute towards universal health coverage in some of these expanded roles, but if we don't have the funding models there to do it, it may not be sustainable or scalable. And so we really need to look at that. And I think each country should be looking at that, but also we should look at that universally. And the final one I'd probably say is just that cultural and professional resistance to expanded scope. So there are some probably organisations, not at the practitioner level, where they don't see the pharmacist role as taking on some of these more clinical roles. And I think the more that we can do to educate other healthcare professionals about the value of what a pharmacist does, the better.
okay. Okay, so like mentoring normally comes up as a tool for leadership development. So how do you think mentoring will help prepare the next generation of pharmacists for roles in policy and health leadership? You said there's a gap in policy and all that, and we need to be there. So how do you think mentoring will help prepare us?
Yeah, look, I am a huge fan for mentoring. I have some professional mentors myself in my career. Some are pharmacists and others are not. So the first comment I'll make is that if you don't have a mentor, you should look for someone that really inspires you to do great things. And they don't have to be pharmacists. I think it helps if you're working in pharmacy, if you do have a pharmacist mentor. I have several. But as I mentioned, you can sometimes get these ideas and this inspiration from people outside of the industry. So I encourage that because it makes you think a little bit more broadly. I'm a huge fan of mentorships. When I started very early out in my career at PSA, actually, I was the mentorship project manager for early career pharmacists
Oh,
many years
wow.
ago. Yeah, and we brought together younger pharmacists with so kind of students in their final years of pharmacy and interns, which are early career pharmacists, and we brought them together with e- other ECPs that were probably within the 10-year post graduation. And we did that on purpose because we wanted those ECPs to be able to really relate to those early career
Yes.
pharmacists themselves. So they're not feeling like it's a huge stretch. And that it's feeling like that they can achieve those goals. And so that was really fruitful. And I still see the person that I mentored at different conferences. And, she now owns a business,
Oh, wow.
a
You must be
business.
so
So
proud.
I am really proud. Yeah. So I'm all for mentorship. And I think what it helps us do is, if I talk a bit about it, it helps us develop leaders for the future. And I think it helps us build confidence and resilience in pharmacists for the future. I think quite often I've seen pharmacists sometimes be, jaded around certain things that might happen across the course of their career, and I think mentorship really helps you put that person back on track and know that there's going to be highs and lows, and this is all part of building your experience. But I'm a fan for mentorship in this space in particular because I think it really helps younger pharmacists, early career pharmacists, develop their strategic thinking, think outside the moment, and think more longer
Yes,
term.
outside the box. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that it's a collaborative process. So I, as a say older pharmacist, don't have all the answers, and there's so much that I can learn from early career pharmacists as well. And I think that kind of relationship develops innovation in itself. Um, but the value, I think, for the mentee is that they're getting that observational learning from experienced people in the industry, and they're building their confidence and problem solving skills through that time. And so I think that's really important because if we can build those skills, then we're, enhancing their strategic thinking and awareness of different policies and issues in our industry. And we're kind of fostering their own advocacy skills and system level understanding. So, yeah, I think if the more we can do that, then we can really encourage innovation in healthcare delivery and access globally.
Okay. Thank you so much. So speaking more about collaboration, right? It's key in healthcare. I want to know, like, how do you see pharmacists working with doctors, nurses, and other professionals to achieve the universal health coverage? Like, how do you see them working together effectively?
Yeah, I think it definitely has to be in an integrated care model. Um, I think the more we can do things like participate in cross-disciplinary education and training or networking and meetings, case conferencing, things like that, the more that we get an understanding of the healthcare professionals themselves, and how each of us is approaching and contributing towards the healthcare of that individual. And I think that will develop respect, and it will also develop trust. in those relationships. So we've got to be integrated and embedded in the primary care teams. The more we do cross-disciplinary work, the better. And I think the more that we can leverage collaborative practice models, they do exist, in countries like the UK, Canada, and New Zealand. Australia is now, you know, we now have an expanded scope of practice, and a lot of that does involve us communicating with the patient's broader healthcare team. And that might be a general practitioner. It could be an allied health worker like a physiotherapist. So I think, yeah, I think that is kind of the crux of how we can do that.
Okay. Okay, so looking at the bigger picture, right? Are there regulatory or policy shifts you personally think that will really strengthen the role of pharmacists in healthcare transformation?
Um, Policy shifts that, yes. Let me just have a think.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, look, I think policy shifts are around removing some of those barriers that we talked about, because each country is different. I'm very conscious of that. So I think we need policy reform in terms of removing some of the barriers to what uh, professionals such as pharmacists can do and where they can do it. I think the other reform that's really needed in terms of policy is that funding model of who is the funder going to be, and how sustainable is that in the long term? It has to be both scalable and sustainable. So every country is different. The reason I say that is, for example, in Australia, we have various funding models for health service delivery and for medicines that subsidise medicines, and I don't know that that exists globally. So we're in a unique position in Australia. But having said that, a service that a pharmacist delivers is it's the payer that pays at the moment, so the patient pays. There are some examples where that doesn't occur, like in vaccinations, that is now being funded by the government. But if you're the same if you're a healthcare professional and you're delivering the same service as another healthcare professional to potentially the same patient, then why are we not being paid or remunerated in the same way for our time and our expertise? So I think some of those reforms are really critical.
Okay. Okay, so looking forward, what excites you the most about the pharmacy profession? Like its potential to contribute to the global health and universal health coverage. What excites you the most?
Um, Look, I think what excites me the most is that there's so much potential for pharmacists to contribute, whether that be in, leading health awareness of certain diseases. If you think about just where community pharmacists are placed, we're the most accessible healthcare professional. Certainly in Australia we are, and I assume globally. And that really puts us in a unique position to lead disease awareness initiatives, participate in early detection of chronic diseases and prevention programs. There's so much that we can do in that space. Vaccination is just a very small part of that. It's being able to identify these patients with chronic diseases and, in some instances, get them on treatments or have other interventions with healthcare providers sooner so that we can impact the trajectory of those diseases. And I think we can really play a role in bridging that gap in the equity of access. Because not everyone can afford to pay for things, and not everyone can afford to wait to see a prescriber or a doctor. And the government certainly can't afford to have everyone going to hospitals. So, I think what excites me most is that opportunity as a pharmacist, that we can contribute to so much more if we fully utilize all of our skills. And I'd also like to see us really drive innovation in care delivery and look at what technologies we can use, that better helps patients, in terms of both their access but their outcomes.
Thank you. Okay, so what advice would you give early career pharmacists like me who are eager to make a meaningful impact in global health?
Yes. Okay. I've got a lot of tips for the ECPs.
And we're here.
Yeah, and I would say you can do it. You can achieve anything that you put your mind to. So, if you've tried something and it fails, don't let that hold you back. I would say some tips is get a mentor. Really,
Yes.
really look to learn from them, get a better understanding of the broader health ecosystem, and try to get that helicopter view so that you can identify gaps and really advocate for systemic change. I think engage really early in policy and advocacy. On reflection of my own journey, through pharmacy, I engaged in it really late in my career. I've always been passionate about pharmacy, but it's probably in the last decade where I've really engaged more in those policy and advocacy aspects. And having a young voice is so important, because you should have a role in shaping your future and the future of healthcare. Um, Join, where possible, professional bodies like FIP. In Australia, we have a number of different professional bodies. If you're not a member and you're not engaged, if you're not interacting, going to webinars, attending networking events, then you're really missing out. There's a whole big world out there. So get involved. And I think, advocate for really pharmacy specific indicators in some of these national or global frameworks, and really push for regulatory reforms, so that we see that expansion of pharmacist scope and that we see that integration of pharmacists within their primary care team. Um, I will say that you should invest in education and lifelong learning. You don't just do a degree and then that's it, you're a pharmacist. You must continuously learn and grow, and develop your skills, because you might start in one spot in your career, but there's so many more places that you can move to, and you cannot do that without, developing your own self. And so, pursuing training in things like, it doesn't even have to be in clinical training. It can be in things like public health, health economics, digital health, or policy. I'm currently myself at this old age doing a PhD, so that I
It's
can
never
develop
too late.
myself. So I've left it a bit late, but you know what? It is never too late. That's right. If in hindsight, I wish I had done that so much earlier. Um, and try to really stay informed, read journals, read articles, so that you're across what's happening in healthcare, not just in the pharmacy bubble, but outside of that. That's what really helps us stay abreast of things. And if we think about things like artificial intelligence, it's just a whole new game. And I will be trying to learn from ECPs around that, because that is moving at such a fast pace. You can really take ownership of what that will look like in the future for pharmacy and for patients. So I hope that's enough tips.
Yes, it is more than enough. Okay, but I would like to ask a question. So, you said that is in your last decade that you became more interested in policy and advocacy. So, are there practical steps or ways that you would advise for early career pharmacists like us to also start right now to learn from you and your own experience?
Yeah, well, look, what did I do? I gave everything a go. Give everything a go. Uh, I've had a lot of success when I've given it a go. I've also had a lot of failures, and I've tried to really reflect and learn on those failures. And failures is a harsh word. I wouldn't say they're failures. It's just it didn't work. And then when it didn't work, I looked at how does that transform into another opportunity. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to reflect, learn from yourself, your experiences, and others, and you will develop your experience. And don't be afraid to give things a go. So, for me, I always had a passion. It started off with education and training. I still have
Yeah.
that passion. And, I looked at other qualifications. I did a certificate for in training and an assessment, which in Australia is a nationally recognised qualification.
Wow.
And that really gave me the breadth to look at more deeply at competencies for pharmacists, but also looking at different programs and how we can make them very practical and realistic in terms of what a pharmacist will do at the end of the day. I think when I finished my degree very early on, I worked in universities and I loved it because I was close to the ground and I could also relate to the students because it wasn't that long ago that I was a student myself. And I think being able to share experiences around that really encourages people to think outside the square. So I had done that qualification. Pharmaceutical industry opens up a whole new world around the support and the structures they give people. So you will do, a lot of training in professional conduct, working in the industry. You will also do a lot of training in learning behavioral styles of different people and how that really helps as a pharmacist when you're talking to other stakeholders like doctors, government. Uh, and leadership, also done a lot of leadership training, and that's really helped me mentor and support people that I used to work with. So, I reflect and I think, now I see people that I've really supported and tried to develop and coach. And I see them as health economists, or I see them as, working for global companies who are developing education and training now and really at the forefront of care. So I think don't be afraid to give things a go. It's it's worse if you don't give it a go because then you'll never know. And always be really courageous and curious. Don't stop the curiosity. Don't stop asking questions, because we need ECPs. We need them to, be the voice of the future, but also step up into these leadership roles.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there's another question I would like to ask you. So, like how early career pharmacists, sometimes they're normally confused on what pathway to take. Pharmacy is very diverse. As someone that has gone through so many aspects of pharmacy, what would you advise? How would you advise them to find their own path?
Yeah, I think what you've got to do is, and I used a really clever tool when I looked at it myself. It was, I think you've got to think holistically about yourself as an individual. What is really important to you? Um, what things do you value in your career, but in your life? So, for example, do one day do you want to have a family? Do you want that balance of being able to contribute towards healthcare, but also being able to have a family and support that family and spend time with that family? So, I think that helped shape a lot of what I did. I've always thrown myself into work and study, but I think I've always done it with the view that I need to also balance my life with things that I enjoy doing. And I enjoy pharmacy, but I also need to do things outside of that. So I think approach that and assess, do you like the more clinical side of pharmacy? And if you do, then careers such as, working in hospital. I think working in community is very clinical, but even working in industry is very clinical. You've got to deal a lot with research, papers, clinical trials, how you present the data transparently. So, roles in health economics, or clinical trials or drug safety, if you like that real clinical lens, is where you should be focusing your attention on. If you're really passionate about driving change and, you know, being at the forefront of that, then perhaps a role more in policy or advocacy with a professional body or within government is what's more for you. So just take a step back, take a moment to reflect, what do I want in the next 5 years, but then also what do I want in the next 10 and 20 years? And not just from your career, but holistically from your entire life. How do you want that to shape out? And it's not always going to go according to plan, but that is okay. Don't limit yourself. You can always look at a completely different avenue. And I think that's the brilliance of a degree like pharmacy. It really sets you up well for a broad range of opportunities.
Thank you so much. So, is there any other thing that we haven't touched that you would like to highlight? Is there any?
No, look, not at all. I feel like I've spoken so much, Alexis. So if there's anything you want to come back to me on, I'm really happy to answer those questions. But it's been a real pleasure, and I hope that this, I guess, adds value to the
Yes, please, more
ECP
than.
group there, and we have some future policy pharmaceutical industry leaders amongst them.
Yes, we do. We have it. Thank you
And
so much.
I have to ask you, what time is it there now?
Oh, it's 2 a.m.
Oh,
2:43 a.m.
you are so good. Thank you for doing this at a time where I didn't have to be up at 2:43 a.m.
No, no, we always work to make sure that you are comfortable and it takes nothing. This was a lovely opportunity. I'm so happy that you gave us your time. Thank you so much for
No
your time.
problem at all. Thanks, Alexis.
Have a lovely day.
Okay,
Okay, wait, before we
bye.
call, I would like to
Oh,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
you, I hope you had an amazing World Pharmacy Day. How did you spend your day?
Oh, I had an amazing World Pharmacist Day. What did I do? I did a little bit of PhD work. So working on my qualitative work for my health policy paper.
Wow.
Yep, and I did a little bit of, actually, I spent a little bit of time developing a therapeutic module for a pharmacist prescriber education program. So it was as part of my kind of other role. So yeah, so I had a great World Pharmacist Day. And it was sunny. That's the most important thing. It was sunny here in
It
Sydney.
rained all day here. It rained
Oh
all
no.
day.
And what did you do for World Pharmacist Day?
We had a series of webinars in my company, so that was mostly working back end and making sure that everything went well. So that was what I
Work well.
spent my day.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay, so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. On behalf of ECPG, we are really thankful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alexis.